Anniversary, centennial. It's 150. We still call it a centennial, right? The 150th centennial of Canada, Centennial Day of Canada. 150 years. I remember on the 125 centennial, which is 25 years ago, this temple, the International Buddhist Society, this temple, received an award from the Lieutenant Governor of Canada, bringing on the award, it says, significant contribution to the Canadian community. We have an award. I never mentioned it. If you want, we still have that award hang on the wall of our office. You can see the Centennial Award. At that time, I don't know who was the Prime Minister. Mulroney, or something there, was Prime Minister. And we have that award. I think the award were given to two persons in Richmond. One, as far as I can remember, in Richmond. One was given to this temple for significant contribution to the Canadian community. The other one was given to the mayor of Richmond. I think Mr. Gil Blair, for being an excellent mayor during his term in office. So all those who volunteers to this temple should be proud of it. We actually received the award. So 25 years already passed, and we've changed during the 25 years. More and more people came here, but we still have a lot of work to do. We still want to make a lot of improvements. We're not stagnant. We want to do more and more and more, and bringing more contributions to the Canadian community. That's our slogan. That's our mission. All right, so let's continue with the verses summarizing the parameters of the 8 consciousnesses. So just one slide to remind people of what we're talking about, because I don't know if we have first-time comers today. Probably we don't have any first-time comers. So we are studying the consciousnesses, the 8 consciousnesses. And in the first 5, we have the perception consciousnesses. The eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body. And then those are the first 5. And then we have the 6 consciousnesses, which is the cognition consciousness, or the mind, we call it the mano. And then the 7th consciousness will be the manas. It's the manas consciousness, which is the ego consciousness. And the 8th is the store consciousness, we call it the alaya consciousness. We've been studying these, and now we want to first concentrate on the first 5, the perception consciousness, the first 5. Each consciousness has its own characteristics, has its own knowledge, realm of activities, its definition, its function, etc., etc. But we have to remember, how do we approach to study these consciousnesses? We can say, okay, we study the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, but we have to have a system in studying it. The Yogacara always have a system in studying the Yogacara. So we have to have a system how to look at this, each consciousness. And the system we have is this. We have 9 categories when we look at each one of these consciousnesses. We look at how each consciousness perceives the world, the state of objects, how each consciousness gets to know things, the modes of knowledge, and the moral nature of each of these consciousnesses, the realm of its activities, When we say realms, because we have the 3 realms of the universe, right? The realm of desire, the realm of form, the realm of formlessness. So we need to know the realm of its activities, and we also need concomitant mental functions that concurrently function with each consciousness. Necessary preconditions for the arising of each consciousness. How does each consciousness function? And then spiritual transformation towards enlightenment. How do we, the Buddha taught us how to transform this polluted consciousness into enlightenment. And then when we transform it, how do we get to enlightenment? Now that we have to know. With that in mind, then I hope today, without talking about anything else, we can just mention briefly on the 1, 2, 3, 4 objects, modes of knowledge, moral nature, and realm of each consciousness activity. Hopefully we can finish that. That's the reason why I don't want to go through too much chanting today. We still have about 45 minutes to cover. So hopefully we can cover each one of these. The first one is the perceived objects. How does each of the first 5 consciousnesses perceive objects, perceive the world? How does the world appear to each consciousness, the first 5? And they appear in 3 states. 3 states, that's how the first 5 perceive the world. The first state is the state of objects as perceived in reality. And then the state of objects distorted by imagination. So when we see things, is either we see them or hear them or listen to them, the first 5 consciousnesses. The state of object in reality, how does it look? The second state is you distort the reality. Your senses distort the reality. And then the third is the imaginary and illusory state of subject-object. These are the 3 states that we have to examine today. It's very academic, it's very philosophical, it's very psychological. Not just about worshipping, burning incense, that's not that, okay? Next one, modes of knowledge. How does each consciousness know things? By direct veridical perception, by inference, as a fallacy, or by knowing it through knowledge from saints and trustworthy sources. Third, how about the moral nature of each consciousness? Wholesome, unwholesome, or indeterminate? And realms of the activities. The first 5 appeared only in the first and second ground, in the first or second realm. So there are 9 realms, but the first 5 consciousnesses function only in the first and the second realm. But we'll go through that. First ground or first realm, or first 5 consciousnesses. Second ground, nose and tongue do not function in there. Only the eyes, ears, and body function. When you get up to a higher level, your nose and your tongue, they do not function. Because the nose and tongue are too coarse to function, too crude to function. The higher level of consciousness, sentient beings, they don't use the nose and tongue. Only the lower level, like us. Only lower level. So this is what we're going to study today. Hopefully we can cover everything like in here in a systematic way. Okay, let's go to first the 3 states. The world can be perceived in 3 ways by our first 5 consciousnesses. All 3 states are involved in direct perception of the senses. The eyes, the ears, the nose, the body, and the tongue. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about the mind yet. Remember, we're not talking about the mind yet. We're not talking about the ego consciousness, the 7 yet. We're not yet talking about the 8th. We only talk about the first 5. Okay, now what is the first state? The state of object as perceived in reality. The absolute reality as it is seen, heard, smelled, tasted, and touched here and now. As it is, as it appears it is. I'm looking at you. I'm looking at the computer. I'm looking at, as it appears now, a reality. I'm looking at reality with no distortion. They appear that way. I'm looking at Sam. I'm not going to say he's not Sam. His Chen. His figure's distorted. No, I'm looking at Sam. Everybody knows that's Sam. I'm looking at everything in reality. This state is direct veridical perception only, devoid of discrimination, no distinction-making ability. I'm talking only about the first 5. I'm looking at this lantern. The shape appeared in my eyes. I didn't hear it because that's from the form. I didn't hear. This doesn't function. My eyes function. When I look at this lantern, the form appears as an image in my pupil. It is red, but there's no distinction in the first instant of looking. Only in the second instant of looking, when it interacts with my mental, with my mind, then I know it is red. The eyes itself does not know it's red. The eye only perceives the object. When you use the camera, you want to capture a shot of a scenery. The camera itself only functions as a perception, only take in the image. The camera won't say, this is a beautiful picture. The camera itself does not say it's a beautiful picture, it's winter, it's autumn, it does not make distinction. Only the mind does. So the state of object as perceived in reality is the state of objects of the first 5 senses. Like when you talk to me, when you yell at me, I listen to that yelling, my eardrum works, receive the sound, but my eardrum itself, that sense itself does not discriminate as to whether an anger is in there or the feeling is in there. It does not differentiate the feeling. Okay, the state of object is perceived in reality. Some people will say, how does it help me in my life? It helps you a lot. Because when the Buddha talks about consciousness, that should be in detail. That we know that there's a more powerful force behind the first 5 consciousnesses. The second state, the state of real objects distorted by imagination. What is seen, heard, smelled, tasted, and touched are real, but because we impose an imaginary existence upon our experiences of them, we come up with distorted images. For example, seeing an old hunchback man at night in a forest from a distance and thinks that he is a ghost. Since our mental constructs do not match reality, it is a distortion of reality due to forced thinking and attachment of the ego. But it still contains a grain of reality, a real man, so it is called a distorted reality. Even this is very difficult to be understood by people who don't know about the Chinese language. But then sometimes I think the English express the meaning, I think, in a better way than the Chinese in this case. Because by looking at just those 3 words, 代指境, I don't understand what it's talking about. But by looking at the English explanations, sometimes it happens. Sometimes certain language express something better than other language. Sometimes it's vice versa. All right? So the state of real objects distorted by imagination. It's still something, there's some reality in it. You saw a man at night and you thought that's a ghost. It still carry a grain of reality. It's a man. Okay, so it's just a distorted image. The third is the imaginary or illusory state of subject-object. There's no reality in there. It just comes out from imagination. This state is not of reality. It is just imaginary or an illusion of the sixth consciousness. This state accepts the validity of the imaginary or the illusory object. For example, you think that happiness depends on driving a Ferrari, or the mirage as perceived in the desert is an oasis. There's no such thing as an oasis. It's just a mirage. And you think the rabbit has horns. How can rabbit has horns? Only cows have horns. Rabbits with those two ears, they're not horns. But you think rabbit has horns. It's out of imagination, out of illusion. So all our first five senses that perceive things in such a way, you either distort it or you work with the sixth consciousness and create imagination and illusion. You think you're being despised upon by people. You think, you imagine things. It's horrible sometimes the way you imagine things. It's horrible sometimes the way you look at illusory state of objects. And you believe it to be true. It's distorted. You believe it to be true. You look at it with tainted eyeglasses. And that brings you a lot of trouble. Your mind don't work as if your perception is the reality perception. So that's the reason why when we are meditating, we say, here and now. Remember, we have very famous meditator, teachers and masters and guru meditators and say, here and now. Don't think of anything else. You have to live and perceive reality. So that, now, as far as we're talking about the state of objects that you perceive the world, your first five senses perceive the world in three states, and that is inclusive of everything. In reality, with distortion, with imagination. That's how you perceive it. You perceive Mr. Chen, and you think that's Mr. Chen, but that's not Mr. Chen. There's someone that you don't know. So that is what? That's the second state. You distorted information. But with some reality, because that's a human, you think that's Mr. Chen. It's not Mr. Chen. You perceive a human, you look at him, and you immediately discriminated him by saying that this guy, he does not have a good face. He looks like a bad guy. He looks like a criminal. He looks like someone who's stealing something. But you distorted your information. The state of real object distorted by imagination. Or sometimes it's all in your imagination. That guy talked to me, he despised me. Or I'm useless. I have no value in me. I don't have any confidence. If you're always in the if only I had this syndrome, as we've always been talking about, Alan's been talking about, if and only if I had this, it would be that for me. If only I can be more handsome, if I only can be taller, if I only can be richer, if only I have better education, you always crave, you always attach. That's how you perceive things, as the object of externalities. Remember, when you observe things with distortion, with imagination, with illusion, suffering comes. Mental afflictions come. Because you don't perceive things as they appear in reality. You distorted it. Someone talked to you, your ears receive the sentences, receive the feelings, and you thought that he despised you. You thought that he got angry. You thought that he's jealous of you. He thought that he has a hidden implication of every sentence, every word that it was talking about. You're suspicious. You create the imagination of suspicion. You create the imaginary state of illusion. Our senses work that way. As we always said, we have an internal commentator since birth. Do you trust what you see? Trust what you hear? Trust what you taste? It's not trustworthy because you distorted it. Because when you see things, that's how you see. You always see it with imagination, with illusion. You always distort the information. You add on your information. You add your personal bias onto everything when your senses interact. That's the first thing we got to know. Second, how does each one of our consciousnesses, the first 5, get to know things? We get to know things by direct veridical perception. The first 5 perceptual consciousnesses give a truthful picture of reality. You see an apple, you are hearing the river flows. That is what is happening right here and now. 限量, direct veridical perception. You know it now, here and now. Your eyes know it here and now. Your ears know it here and now. All your first 5 senses know it here and now with no distortion, here and now. There is a direct veridical perception, 限量. What's the second mode of knowledge? Inference. It is an assumption based on perception. It is the process of deriving logical thinking of assumed premises, or the process of arriving at some conclusion that possesses some degree of probability relative to the premises. This is what your 6th consciousness thinks upon interaction of the first 5 consciousnesses which have sensed the object. The apple will taste good. So the second one, the second knowing, mode of knowing, is not just direct veridical perception. It is by inference. You apply probability to it. You guessed about it. You apply probability relative to the premises. We're getting into high-level philosophy and psychology, you know. You have to think more about it. When you get to know things, it's not just, I only believe, some people say, I only believe in things that I actually saw, I actually heard, I actually tasted, I actually, you know, they always say, I don't believe. You believe in a God? Have you seen God? If you haven't seen God with your eyes, how can you believe in something that you haven't seen? Is that how you know things? Do you only believe in things you actually hear, you actually see? If you only believe in things you actually see, actually hear, actually taste, then there are many things that you shouldn't believe in. Today is the 150th centennial. When I first came into Canada, the Prime Minister was Trudeau, Pierre Trudeau. And I guess some people here never had a chance to see Pierre Trudeau. And they say, I haven't seen Justin's father, so I don't believe Justin has a father called Pierre Trudeau, because I haven't seen him before. Can you say that? You cannot, because we know that Justin has a father who was a prime minister. Even though you haven't seen him, will you believe in him? So you cannot say, I only believe in things I see, only believe in things I listen to. No. Do you believe that in France, there's a Louis XVIII, there's a French Revolution? You say, I haven't seen the French Revolution. It only happened in history, so I don't believe it. People will say, you're crazy. Because you don't necessarily only believe in things you actually personally see, or seen, or saw. Sometimes you do it by inference, by thinking about it, by comparing, by probability. You know that have you seen your great-great-great-grandfather? You haven't. But by inference, you know that if I have a father, my father have a father, and my granddad had a father, then I must have a great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, even though I haven't seen him. Right? You do it by inference. So you don't necessarily say, I will only believe it if I actually see it with my own eyes. Logically, if you say that, you have a logical problem. Sometimes you do believe in things, you do know things through inference. You agree? If you disagree, always raise your hand. If you don't raise your hands, that means you agree, right? It's very simple. If you disagree, raise your hand and challenge and say, no, I only believe in things I see. If you don't raise your hand, that means, this is logic, you know. If you raise your hand, then you disagree. Then you disagree. If you don't raise your hand, that means you agree, right? You inference. That's how you know things, not necessarily by direct veridical perception. You believe in things through inference also. Third, what happens if number 1 and number 2 is wrong? Say number 2. I believe in things through inference, through probability, assumptions, guessing. But what happens if my inference is wrong? There's certain probability premises are wrong, right? It happened that way. If it is wrong, then it becomes a fallacy. It's not right. It's wrong. It's fallacious because your assumption is wrong. You saw an apple in the distance. That's an apple. Actually, that is not an apple. That is a pear. Looks like an apple. And you say, I saw an apple. I saw an apple is direct veridical perception that that's an apple because I see it with my eyes. That's an apple. But your perception is wrong. Although it's direct veridical perception, but that's not an apple. That's a pear. So it could be wrong. In other words, the first one the 1 and 2 could be wrong. Don't say that you're always right. It could be right, it could be wrong. If it is wrong, it's fallacious. So these are three ways you are knowing something or you're trying to know something. Through direct veridical perception, through inference, and sometimes they're wrong, simply fallacious. And other than these 3, getting to know things by all these 3, there's another one that you should know about. Actually, there's 5, but mentioning 4 would be enough. Knowing from saints and trustworthy source. You get to know something, you don't necessarily have to see it with your own eyes. You don't necessarily have to think about it and doing an inference. And you don't have to guess whether it's right or wrong. Just someone you trust told you. My dad told me that I had a great-great-grandfather because I know my dad wouldn't cheated me with this. And in the history book about Canadian history, we knew that we started some time ago. We knew that there was a transcontinental railway, a CPR built that railway, and it was built in the early 1900s. And it was built by many people, and many people got killed, and many people dug up tunnels, and they spent a lot of time in building the transcontinental railway. But I haven't seen it, but I know everybody's talking about it. It was written in Canadian history. I trust Canadian history. I trust that book, that textbook. So when I believe in something, I don't necessarily have to see it with my own eyes. I don't necessarily have to do any thinking and inference. I simply pick up something and I know it's from the right source. Everybody was talking about it. So it could be from saints, from trustworthy source. So sometimes you say, why do you believe in that? Because the Buddha told me that. Why do you believe in that? Because some people believe in their God. They say, God told me that. Why do you believe in that? Because the Bible told me that. Why do you believe in that? Because some sutras, the Buddhist teaching told me that. That's how you get to know something. All right, so any other modes of knowledge that I haven't included in here? It's very comprehensive. It lays out all the modes of knowledge. Modes of knowledge mean how do you get to know things. It lays out all the methods that your senses get to know things. So your senses try to understand something through these sources. That means you have to acknowledge that sometimes you could be wrong, sometimes you're right, sometimes you can't say, I don't believe in anything unless it is seen by me. No, you know it by knowledge from saints and trustworthy sources. So sometimes the four work together, helps you to know something. The wiser people would ponder using these four ways to know things. People who are biased, maybe they say, I only believe through direct theoretical perception. Anything that I don't see myself with my own eyes, I don't believe. Anything I don't hear by my own ears, I don't believe. Then you could be wrong. You know why? Because as I always give an example, if an ambulance is going by, just about 2 minutes ago, the dog was stuck to bark. Because the dog's hearing are better than ours. Our hearing is not trustworthy. It would say, I don't think that there was an accident, even you tell me now. Somebody call you and say, hey, there was an accident on number 3 and between number 4 and number 3 and Steveston. No, I don't believe in it. No, it's true. Because the ambulances went by and the dog knew about it. Your ears couldn't hear it, but the dog's ear was better than yours. The dog's ears are better than your ears. Human ears, they don't function in a perfect way. They don't even function better than dog's ears. All right, that's how you get to know things. Knowing this kind of information by studying Yogacara, how does it help me? You know how limited you are in your senses. You know your senses are biased. That you know that sometimes you could be wrong. You know that you have an ego that you don't want to change. But actually, what happens in your mind, 50% of the time may be wrong, but you don't acknowledge it. All right, let's take a look at the next one. We're talking about, we already covered the first one, the state, how do we perceive externalities, the state of externalities that we perceive, the 3 states, the state of actual reality, the state of distorted reality, the state of imagination. Those are the 3 states that how we perceive the world. And the second is what? How do we get to understand, to know something? It's either by direct theoretical perception or by inference, or they could be fallacious, or by trustworthy sources. All right. Now we study the moral nature of each of our consciousnesses. None of the first 5 perceptual consciousnesses contain the potential for making moral distinctions. So each one is per se indeterminate. So in nature, but when it interacts with the 6 consciousnesses simultaneously and creates wholesome, unwholesome, or indeterminate deeds. So we have wholesome, either unwholesome, or indeterminate. What does that mean? The eyes themselves, you cannot say, my eyes are wholesome. My ears are unwholesome. My ears listen to this criticism, my ears listen to this gossiping, and I got very angry, so my ears are unwholesome. That's not true. Your ears only receive the information when the information is diagnosed with your ego, with your 6th consciousness, then it creates the mental afflictions in you. So the eyes, the ears, the nose, the body, and the tongue, they are what? They are indeterminate. They're neutral. Depends on how you actually interact with your mind that creates the moral nature of wholesome, unwholesome, or indeterminate. So your eyes itself does not create wholesome, unwholesome, indeterminate karma. It's only through interaction. Okay, so remember, each consciousness has a moral nature by itself, except the first 5. So as I always give the example, the first 5 are only salesmen. They don't make the judgment. Only the mano, the manager behind, makes the judgment. All right, the 3 moral natures. And then, okay, then we get to I got 15 minutes to explain the realms of activities of each consciousness of the first 5. In other words, where do they function? Where do these 5 consciousnesses function? In order to understand that, you have to know the position of where we are now. We are in a universe which is divided into Kama Dhatu, Rupa Dhatu, and Arupa Dhatu. This is the world of desire and form. This is the world with form only, and this is the world without form and without desire. The higher level, the higher consciousness, you don't have any form, you don't have any desire. You only have desire when you're in the lower level. So in order to know where your consciousnesses function, you have to know where we stand. We stand in the first ground. This is the first ground, the first realm. The Devas realm, Asuras realm, humans, animals, ghosts, and hells. The Devas means heavenly beings. So this is the first realm or first ground. And we got the first dhyana, second, third, and fourth. This is the second realm. So the whole of this Kamadhatu is the first realm. Plus 4 realm in here, 4 realm in here. So what's the total realm that sentient beings exist in 9 realms? The Buddha is already out. It's not classified as a ram. The Arahat and Pratyeka Buddha, they're already out, so they're not classified as a ram. The highest ram is the 9th ram, which is the 8th jhana. The jhana of neither consciousness nor no consciousness. So you know where our position stands now? You think human beings are the most intelligent? No. We're not the most intelligent according to the realm of activities. We are in the lower level. We are at the level of heavenly beings. Even heavenly beings, they are not the higher realm. They're still in this realm. Humans, animals, ghosts, or hell victims. So we have sufferings like rebirth, aging, sickness, death, departure, suffering arising from departure from beloved ones, suffering arising with living with hated ones, suffering arising from the 5 skandhas interaction. So we have all kinds of suffering and mental afflictions. And it's the first ground. And then the second ground will be the first dhyana. We call it the second ground. The second ground, as far as our 5 senses are concerned, the 5 senses happen or function in the first realm, no question about it. Do you have the 5 senses? You have. Even heavenly beings. Heavenly beings, they live until 500 years, 1,000 years, 2,000 years, 3,000 years, longer. We only live up to 100 years. But heavenly beings, they live up to thousands of years, but they still are the lower level. So don't think about just going to heaven. Going to heaven is not an ultimate way to go. It's just much, much more happier than humans. So when we say, oh, when I die, I want to go to heaven, it's much better than humans, much better than animals, much better than ghosts, much better than the hell rams, but they're not the outer way to go, because after 5,000 years, 6,000 years of happiness, you still have to go back to reincarnation. So even the heavenly beings, they have the 8 consciousnesses. They have the 8 consciousnesses. Now in the second realm, which is the world with no desire, in the first ground, the tongue and the nose, they do not function. They don't need the tongue and the nose. When only lower animals need the tongue and the nose. Only lower animal needs the five senses. When you go higher and higher, you will see later that our consciousness is at a crude level. All right? Now this is just a preliminary explanation to you. You got to know these. I don't want to explain that in detail. How do you get to the first jhana, second jhana, third and fourth? We can't get into details, otherwise I can't finish. I only have 5 more minutes to go. So let's get back to the grounds. The realms on which the first 5 consciousnesses arise. We call it the 9 grounds. All right? Summarize it: the first ground, the second ground, third, fourth, 5, and up to the 9th ground. The 9 grounds. Remember this 9 grounds, and then the first 5 consciousnesses function fully in the first ground, the ground that we're in now. In a higher level, which is the world with no desire, with only form, the nose and the tongue do not function anymore. Only what? Only the eyes, the ears, and the body, and the 6th consciousness, the 7th consciousness, and the 8th consciousness exist. The realms on which consciousnesses arise. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. What do they stand for? Our consciousnesses. Number 1 consciousness is eyes, and then ears, nose, tongue, body, mind, the ego consciousness, the store consciousness. This represents the consciousnesses. And this represents the grounds, the realms of activities in which our consciousness function. This P represents partially function. F represents this consciousness fully function. The first ground, the heavenly beings, all of these function. People in heaven, the devas, all the 8 consciousnesses function. Ordinary beings like the ghosts, the animals, the humans, all of them functions. For hell victims, sorry, they don't have the eyes, the ears, the nose, tongue, the body, they don't function. Only the 6 consciousnesses partially function. The 7 and 8 functions. So only your consciousness, your 6, 7, 8 consciousness function in hell. In other words, in hell you don't have a body. Partially, you have partially a body exists, but actually your 6, 7, 8 consciousness suffer. Not your eyes, your nose, your ears, your tongue, your nose. So these, if you summarize it, most of your 8 consciousnesses function in the first ground. The second ground, there's no nose and no tongue. Only eyes, ears, body, cognition of mind, ego, and the store consciousness. And as you go further and further up, when you go to the highest level, the full consciousness that exists is the light consciousness. At the very high level, just the level before you get out from reincarnation, get out from samsara. So the meditators, when they meditate a higher level, they don't have the body anymore. No more tongue, no more nose, no more body exists anymore. The body exists at a very crude level. Even at the 8th ground, the first 5 consciousnesses do not function in this level, nothing whatsoever level. So in the formlessness world, only the 6, 7, 8 consciousnesses exist. The first 5, they don't even exist, because you're at a very high level of consciousness. Our consciousness are very crude, very coarse. The finer you are, the higher level you are. So we better work hard to get out from all this. But we don't. We thought that we still like food, fame, reputation, sex, families, love. We still attach to these. We can never get out from these. We think that we need these. But actually we don't need these. If you throw them away, don't attach to them, and really practice, you're a very higher level. So when those people at a higher level, when they look at us, They want to close off their nostrils. You really stink. We really stink. You know, they want to get close to us. Do you want to get close to a garbage dump? Or you want to get close to living beings in a garbage dump? You don't want to go there. And how come these people at a 9 ground, 8 ground, they don't come to us? Because we're in a garbage. We are a worm in a garbage dump. I'm not being negative. We try to be very positive in a garbage. I'm a positive worm in a negative garbage dump. That's what it sounds like. And every day we're living in a garbage dump, and we think we're okay. Everything we're involved with, a lot of mental afflictions. We're involved with killing, lying, sexual misconduct, drinking, intoxications, killing, everything. We're involved with everything that creates karma. We don't know about it. We're craving for fame, reputation, sexual misconduct. We're involved with everything that creates bad karma, that bind us in the garbage dump. We can't get out of it. Only the very wise could get out from it. First of all, only the wise people, I'm not praising myself, who wanted to be a monk or a nun. Who would become a monk and a nun to get out from a garbage dump? Who would want to become a monk and a nun to learn how to get out from a garbage dump? No, they don't want to. They want to get involved with the family, with a wife, with a husband, with kids. Whoa, they want to be involved with all the worms in the garbage dump. Do you want to learn how to get out from a garbage dump? In August, we'll have a temporary ordination where you can become a monk for 7 days or a nun for 7 days in the coming August. Are you going to join us? I have 46 people from Hong Kong. They fly all the way from Hong Kong to take this, to join us in this program of ordination. And out of the 46, 26 wanted to become tonsure. They want to shave their hair to become a temporary monk and nun. They want to learn how to become one in the 7 days. And the number of participants is increasing. So we have learned how our first 5 consciousnesses perceive the world, the state of objects as perceived, 3 states: reality state, distorted state, imagined state, and then that's how we perceive the world. And then we learned the most of knowledge. How does each consciousness get to understand and know things? Is either through veridical direct perception, inference, fallacy, or from trustworthy sources like saints and other trustworthy sources. And we also learned each consciousness usually have a moral nature. It's either the consciousness is wholesome, morally wholesome, morally unwholesome, or morally indeterminate. The first 5 are what? Indeterminate. It depends on how it mixed up with the 6, that it becomes wholesome or unwholesome. It by itself per se is indeterminate, it's neutral. And then we'll learn where do our first 5 consciousness actively function. Our first 5 consciousnesses only actively function in the lowest level in this first ground, and in the second ground too. But in the second ground, the nose and the tongue, they don't. And when you go to the third ground, even the first 5 consciousness, you don't need them anymore. The less of the first 5 you have, the higher level you are, if you practice in the right way. On second thought, I'm thinking back at what I've always quoted as an example on Helen Keller. Helen Keller did not have the first 5. Only they don't have the first 4. So the eyes, ears, nose. The tongue is okay. So when you have less senses, the very wise people would have more energy to get enlightened. If you direct your energy of the senses to the right way. So she was able to be very wise with less senses. But usually people with less senses, they don't function. Say if you're blind, if you're deaf, you say, I give up, I give up. I can't see, I give up. I can't listen, I give up. When you give up, then nothing comes true. But when you don't give up, then you conjure, when you concentrate in your attention, your energy into what you're good at, maybe it turns out to be, turn out to be much better than everybody else. Any question up to now? So I have covered the first four. I still have others. So we do it in a very systematic way. The first five are very simple consciousnesses. When you get to the 6, 7, and the 8, they become extremely complicated. If you do not know what I'm talking about now, you may as well don't need to come later, because it's getting more and more complicated. It's getting deeper and deeper into consciousness that you may not know what I'm talking about. I've spent 40 years to study this. And some of this I'm still searching for it. It gets very complicated. I don't know how these ancient people can have so much intelligence getting into details like this. I'm amazed at how Asanga and Vasubandhu, could have written something like this and it's still passed down from one generation to the next.